want to give the floor to our friends at Assembly. Welcome. Woo woo!
Good luck.
Can you hear me? Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much, guys, for showing up this morning. I know maybe it's been a rough night, so it's really appreciated, and we are really touched about it. We are very pleased and honored to be today on this stage, and we are Assembly. Assembly is an architectural visualization studio based in London since 2008, and here you can see our small but very talented CG team. I'm Giada, and I'm here today presenting with my colleagues Davide, Monika, and Rob. And just let me say something about Assembly, in case you never heard about us. We are an ArcVis studio, and we basically produce all sorts of CGI, cinematograph, animations, 360 images, VRs, and Unreal model, and also Blueprint interactive model. And then we, as an ArcVis company, and as also Fabio said, we kind of concentrated on unbuilt architecture and spaces. And we also produce everything in-house, and we collaborate with two of the other teams that we have in the office, which are the graphic design teams that takes care of the branding, and then the digital team, which develop all the platform that we offer for the clients for the VR and the interactive models. Then we also do love R&D, and we run 3 months workshop just to explore more of unconventional non-commissioned images, or just to explore some of the plugins or new techniques that we really want to then integrate with our workflow. And then also, what probably makes Assembly special is the way we work together as a team, because we really think that cooperating and sharing our ideas is the way to enhance our creativity. We do work all the time, share our work without any criticism, well, at least constructive ones, and no matter the role that you have. So today, this is probably a really such an important thing that led us to the topic that we want to discuss with you today, guys. It's about how to feel and create a common ground, a kind of a perfect intersection between clients and artists' expectations. Just to not see clients as enemies, but just a way to collaborate and communicate with them. This is because in the past 2 years, we've been really, we had lots of issues about that. Before COVID, we felt that we could express our creativity much more than recently. And then, once we had to, with the first lockdown, we had to set up an office at home, and we kind of lost all this cooperation and sharing ideas that we had before. And we started feeling that with the lack of work that at least Assembly experienced, we were feeling more like machines, that they had to work and deliver things really fast and please any client's request. And we struggle letting as well clients listening to us and to our suggestions. So we kind of felt we were not be able to express a real creativity that makes a CG artist an artist.
But don't you think that the client got affected by COVID too? When we were talking with the clients, especially during the lockdown, they were telling us that they as well had a lot of issues as a majority of industries. So, but I think they had just extra few considerations to think about. For example, such as the future of ongoing or new projects. For example, you remember when the workers couldn't go to the sites to work, but they still had to be paid. So that meant that they had a financial pressure, as well as working from home. What that meant that we had communication problems. And sometimes we had misunderstandings between us and the clients.
When speaking with others in the ArcViz industry, we also noticed a lot of them were having to furlough workers. This often meant that the current work was sort of getting pushed onto more, or the current, or the remaining employees. This often meant that the personal time that you would often have in working from home or was then getting reduced because you were ending up having to constantly check on renders or having any issues, and always having that urge to sort of check during lockdown, which is a shame. As Giada also said, one large part of the workflow at Assembly is collaboration. We, as a whole team, review every image before it goes out to all the clients. And working from home, it was going to be inevitable that we often felt creatively isolated and lacking in that creative freedom that we had while working in the office.
It seems like that those kind of issues that Monika and Rob explained were really relatable for most of the ArcViz studios, or at least it was for us, or any, like not even ArcViz studio, because it's connected to what we experienced during pandemic. But Assembly was lucky enough to go back full-time to the office pretty soon. So I would like to ask you, have you regained your creative freedom after coming back to the office, if anyone did?
Well, Giada, I don't know about the people in the audience, but I don't think we really did. For this reason, we try to explore the issues a little bit more into detail. And on Monday mornings, we started to do in these meetings where we would talk about, the different aspects of creativity in ArcViz. For example, the use of lighting, the use of color, or the use of, composition. What we wanted to understand was basically what is creativity in ArcViz. For this reason, we gave out a little bit of a questionnaire to our colleagues, and where we basically asked, what do you think are the creative aspects of ArcViz? Not surprisingly, the main aspects can be divided into categories. There are a bit more conceptual, such as, the use of narrative, the elaboration that goes through an image, the passion that carries us through it, or even the curiosity of researching. And those aspects that are a bit more practical, like the use of lighting and composition, the references that we look for when we make a mood board, or even the brainstormings that we have as a debrief to the image.
Okay, so it looks like that these kind of issues were not related completely to pandemic, but they are like a kind of a much deeper problem that probably lockdown only helped highlighting it. So if we are so, if it's so easy to identify all of those creative aspects in our job, and if we really can understand what would make feel us artistic, then why is it so difficult to express our creativity?
One of the big reasons it felt like we struggled creatively was that we had this kind of conflict. It was quite common for clients and artists to both have sort of differing approaches to making images. On the one side, you have the artist approach, which is obviously a realism plays a large part of the role here. On one side, it's there's obviously they're nice-looking materials, and modelling is all good, but often we are wanting to tell a story or have a mood, and we also like to explore the space that our clients are creating. We often are the first to explore the space, at least within a 3D environment. And having that ability to choose the camera and the lighting gives us a fairly unique experience, or a fairly unique perspective that otherwise you wouldn't be able to have within sort of 2D plans or elevations. We're often also trying to find unique ways of representing an image, although we're trying to make it relatable for both the client and the viewer. We're also trying to just sort of make something that's fairly unique. But on the other hand, from the client's perspective, they quite rightly are asking us always to make it sort of look brand new, removing any elements of imperfection or dirt or any signs of wear or tear. They're also, well, we're also often wanting to, or they're wanting us to have representing their marketing goals, which can often be views or specific lifestyles that they may have. And they often are also wanting to show as much as they can with the least amount of images. That often results in having quite wide angles or showing views from quite far away. And also, of course, they want to get it done as quick as possible.
Yes, Rob, I agree on these expectations. I think it is important to understand the needs clients have. On the next slide, you're seeing now an image which we recently worked on, which was successful for clients' marketing purposes. We did eye-level shots just to show how it integrates, how the building integrates within the city line, and of course to show the main focus of the image, which was reception. Next slide. If you focus now on the building, you can see that it is fully lit. So we did that in order to highlight the main features of the building, such as the shape of the architecture, double height reception, and to understand the materiality. In the next slide, here you can see that we use the daylight to achieve a clean feeling in the image and to see the better relationship with the building standing nearby. And the context is slightly faded, just not to overcome the building. And we used blue sky, which is as well slightly faded, just to create a hierarchy in the image and not to overpower the building. In the next slide, yes, here you see the people. So the people is the fundamental in the image. They create a narrative. So we try to show that the street is alive, to have this alive feeling, and to show daily London story.
Okay, so if this, as Monika said, it's a successful image for the client, then do you feel that the artist would have approached this kind of image in a different way, like in a way that the outcome would be different if we fully embrace the artistic approach?
Well, Giada, as artists, we actually ask ourselves these very questions. And we wanted to try and answer it in a very practical way. And the only practical way that we know how to do this is making images. So basically, our idea was to create an image from scratch where we wouldn't have any client restrictions or boundaries. And we also had the chance to present this at the 3D London a few months back, thanks to Nigel. If you don't know what 3D London is a series of conventions that take place on every first Monday of the month in the London city centre, where CG people such as yourself or us can get the chance to meet and talk about these kind of topics and issues. So basically, the idea was very simple. We wanted to create a recognizable image, one that's not too much out there, so something that we could actually sell to a client, but we shouldn't have had any restriction whatsoever. We just wanted to use our creative flow.
We came up with a few ideas for creating the image that we could hopefully follow throughout the process. Firstly, we wanted to come up with a fairly unconventional framing for the image. It should also have a strong composition that could feel sort of relatable to the viewer, and the context of the main building should both feel sort of compatible with each other, and also, of course, it should tell a story.
Right. As always, the approach is the same. We start by collecting references. We wanted to collect references separately so that the image wouldn't be too similar to our taste. But as you can see from this screenshot, all the references that we collected were kind of similar. And as it's suspicious because probably we all went to see the Batman movie in that period, so we got inspired a bit like that. So in the next slide, you can see out of all the images that we collected, we created a mood board. The mood board has to be really clear to our intent, obviously. And basically, as you can see, our idea was basically to create an image with a really high contrast of color. On the right side, we wanted to have like warm colors, while on the left side, really warm, really cold ones. We also wanted to create a gradient of darkness going from the foreground to the background, and we also wanted to add a lot of fog, kind of to make it moody, but also to create this chromatic bridge between one side and the other. And lastly, we also wanted to add as few people as possible in order not to cluster it too much with people, but still kind of give a little bit of a storytelling that's interesting and unique.
After collecting some of the references, we then started sketching our ideas. We thought that the image should be located in a city that was sort of thematically consistent with those references that we had before. We experimented with the framing and came up with the idea of actually placing the observer sort of within that railway arch that you can see in the sketch. This would help frame that main building on the right-hand side, and then on the left it would also help sort of, well, it would frame the sort of context on the left-hand side and almost act as a portal for the road that would sort of combine all the elements together. For the colour, we wanted to have that sort of warm colour that we had from the references on the right-hand side and the cooler tones on the left. And for the story element, we also wanted there to be sort of something happening within the middle. So in this case, we sort of were having the idea of having a taxi and someone interacting with that, and maybe a doorman or concierge just to sort of tie that story back into the main building. And then also potentially have sort of a silhouetted figure on the bottom left to sort of frame that bottom left-hand side of the image and sort of mirror the main frame of the top right-hand side.
Right. Obviously, after all of this conceptualizing and reference collecting and sketching, we actually made the thing. We want to take the chance to show you a little bit of the behind the scenes of how we made it. We think it's really interesting. Just bear in mind, it's like 150 hours of work compressed in 3 minutes, so the time lapse is going to be a bit quick, but that's okay if you can follow. We started with the main building, obviously, as is the subject of the image. We used Railclone 5 to make it. We didn't really follow any kind of reference. The idea was to make a recognizable building that we would find in any city center. It has to be really tall to kind of like exalt the verticality of the portrait aspect of the image. And we wanted it to be really reflective and glossy, because reflections are cool. And yeah, that's basically the whole process made in Railclone 5. We just follow a basic architectural vein without any like rule or anything. The next step would be creating the foreground of this image. This was a really important component of the whole piece, because it's basically the eye through which we could see the whole city behind. It gives a lot of framing that we all love, and it gives like a high contrast. So it gives kind of a depth through which we can see the image, and it creates also a lot of sense of scale, because you have like these columns in the foreground and then the whole city in the background. The next step after the renders would be the light mix. This is a really important process. We try also always to spend as much time on this part as we can, because basically we have the time and clarity to rethink our approach to the image, rethink the colors and the lighting, and we always keep, the references really close by, so we, not diverge too much from what was our initial idea. As you can see, we basically start by tweaking the most intense sources of light, such as the building and on the right and the building on the left, and then we work our way through the least intense ones, such as the sky or the lights in the background. This is also a really long process, because sometimes it's where creative differences come to light. In this case, we actually had a little bit of a fight about the sky. Someone wanted to be darker, someone wanted to be lighter. We just, decided to go on a common ground with this kind of bluish sky. And yeah, and we just export a load of light mixes for the next step, which is post-production. Fortunately, because we spend so much time on materials and colors and lighting, we don't need to do too much post-production usually. rather than just fix the colors, fix a little bit of the reflections, fix a little bit of the global look and feel of the image, and just correct some details where necessary. It shouldn't be too long as a process if the raw renders are good. We're more like an 80-20 kind of approach to this process. And the last step would be people placing. This is actually one of the longest process we go through usually, because it's really hard for us to find the right people. But we already know where to put them, so that was kind of good. As you can see, basically we started from the closest to the farthest. The closest person is the one in the foreground. It's really important because it gives scale to the foreground, as you kind of lose it in the image. But it still gives a lot of framing. Also, the guy looks on the right side of the image, and that's something we do on purpose, so that you unconsciously are brought to look at the right side of the image where the actual protagonist is, which is the building. Once you look at the right side of the image, you start seeing other people, such as the doorman, called the taxi cab, or the guy just walking through the taxi. And that's just to create a little bit of a story. So it's really a little bit more interesting when you look at the image and you just don't see a plain building with a clustered load of people. There's something going on. All the other people are basically more like a filler. They give depth, they give scale, and they just color match their own zones. And this is basically how it turned out to be at the end.
After that, we decided to sort of do a bit of a post-analysis of the image, just to see how the guiding principles sort of went through the image-making process. As we can see, that the building is sort of occupying sort of a third of the image. We didn't want to give the building sort of a dominant space within the image, as we often feel like hiding part of the image or having some sort of, or having it almost sort of hidden is a much better way of selling a concept or a mood. And then we can see here that the frame is also, and the context is sort of framing that building on the right-hand side as well. However, by sharply sort of dividing the image, we tried to make sort of bring it back together. And we did that by sort of having these transitioning colors. So obviously we've got the warm colors on the right-hand side and the cold colors on the left. And we added these sort of, orangey, purpley colors to sort of act as like a color bridge between the two main aspects of the image. And then the street in this case is sort of reflecting the light off of the street lights and the cab itself to sort of bridge that, which was sort of one of the points that we had from the guiding principles we had at the start of the image. We also have sort of focal points of color within the image, just to sort of bring the focal point back to the center and sort of really outline that idea of warmth and cool colors.
This again is the final result. One last thing that I want to mention is that we also kept in mind the fact that the portrait cropping is a little bit of a unconventional cut for some clients. So we also imagine it like, would it work also in landscape mode? So we cut in landscape, and we believe that it still, works the way we intended to. So basically, there's this really strong composition. The thirds are respected, the foreground is respected, the colors as well. And we believe that it's not really weakened by this new cut, but it can also be a bit strengthened, if you may.
Okay, so let me ask this time. Do you think that this image was fully successful from the artist's point of view?
Well, Giada, there's something unarguably unique, we believe, about this image, but I cannot really tell you one simple reason why. The whole process has been really cool, but it gets kind of overwhelming when you don't have restrictions from a client. So having the creative freedom to do whatever you want, you can get lost into some details sometimes, or you just follow the flow and you end up being 3 in the morning and you don't know what you're doing anymore. In any case, I still think that the way it turned out is extremely fulfilling and rewarding, and we'll love it.
Okay. So let me clarify some stuff. We saw two examples where one was mainly concentrated on the client's purposes, and then the other one was more from the artist's point of view. To be honest, we think that this shows a kind of an inner conflict that as artists we all have, which is a conflict between a more practical and logical side which achieves all the marketing goal, and then one side which is much more experimental and is our creativity. In these two examples, we embrace both sides, and we think that they are both too extreme in a way that it either satisfies one side or the other, so or either the clients or the artists mainly. And in the first example, we saw when maybe a client can overstep and just try to set up not only their goals, but also the way to achieve it. And this leads to an image that is pretty conventional and never goes above the comfort zone of everything that's been already seen. It's basically an image that doesn't distinguish. But then on the other side, we saw also an image done by artists with no boundaries at all, that is like, can only work for a non-commissioned image, at least for now. And like, it doesn't really set the goal of a commissioned image where the client is involved. So for us, we think that to do a good commissioned image, the artist should know the purpose, without, of course, losing the freedom to embrace his full creative freedom. So if extreme either don't work, then we kind of need to find a way for the clients and the artists to cooperate and to communicate. And we think that, in this case, the client should have the freedom to choose what they need, and then the artist has to have the freedom to choose how to achieve it.
That's true. The client's goals are as important as ours, our creativity. If we're going to let client step over us, that could lead to mass production and probably with no meaning in it. So, Giada, you said that the common ground is where we all have to stand, but maybe audience wondering, what is that common ground? How do we get to this common ground? So I would like to walk you through the process, how we reach it. On the next slide. Our company structures the projects in several stages, where the compositions is the first one. We take the stage really seriously. We do, throughout our experiences, we learn that this stage has to be communicated to the client as clearly as possible, with the proper research done before. We made an image which was actually successful for both sides, for us, artists, and for the client. But as you can see from all these images, it was a really, really long journey. I think it took like 3 months or so, right? 3 months sending back and forth, and then till we came up with the final composition. But don't get me wrong, it didn't happen with all the images. It was our new client. This was our new client, and we took this situation as an excuse to build a relationship with the client, to understand the project and how we should approach this project. So here's the final composition with the final references, and we agreed that the sunlight has to be from the back because it made more unconventional image. And it showed how beautifully new architecture sits within the city line. And of course, if we have a chance, we like to add some drama. So in this case, we used some warm fog to create that. This is the patched drone photography, which was made out of many photographs. It's not only the patchwork what we did. We cleaned the image, we straightened the verticals. And the funny thing about this whole situation, so as I said, it took 3 months. So we started this composition in summer. So by the time we agreed on it, it was already autumn. So what happened? The daylight changed. And at the time we set in summer, it was already dark. So we had to come in with an agreement. Are we gonna push for the evening shot, for the dusk shot? Or are we gonna try to match the references and the previous composition? So as you can see, we stayed with the dusk shot. And originally, the composition was made as a portrait, but of course, when the client saw this aspect ratio, they were like, oh yeah, let's go for it. Like, we see so much on the left, we see so much on the right. And of course, it suited us, right? And we like this landscape format, and you can see how beautifully building sits in, and you see the amazing skyline as well. And here is the final, here's the photography and the final integration. So during this important stage, our team had a really long research, which was constantly communicated to the client. We were contemplating possible ideas with them, and then trying to come to a mutual solution which will fulfill expectations of both. In that way, we engaged more with the client, we understood project better, and of course we built the trust, which was probably the most amazing thing and the most important thing. Leading Hall is one of the biggest projects in London City, which we recently worked on. And based on how many people were involved in this process, I think we delivered really good image. We were successful for both sides. And as Giada said before, I think we reached a perfect intersection or a sweet spot.
So let me just take a summary on whatever we said. So Monika was right. We think that what makes a difference for this project, which is just an example, is the way we communicate with the client, and we build like a trust relationship. And the client on the other side was also willing to risk and take to go over their usual comfort zone. So in the past years, we've been really lucky to be able to work on some great projects with some great clients. And in this case, all those clients were really wanted to communicate with us and to build a relationship. And in the same way, we were enjoying expressing our real creativity with them, making, of course, images for them. So if a client really wants to explore and take risks, then we think the creative side might be much easier to be found by the artist. And then on the other side, if clients trust the artist, we'll have less fear to embrace our full creative freedom. And the artist, we saw that probably shouldn't just work with no boundaries at all and just do an image for himself, because it might be misleading, and then in this case they might end up in a really long process without any direction, or either on the other side having too many directions set up from the client. It will not leave you any expressive freedom to explore. So we think that the solution, this kind of perfect intersection or just a common ground between us and the client, should happen if the artist smartly embrace client's boundary in order to have a direction, and then this direction still leave you an infinite amount of possibility to just explore whatever you feel in your creativity. So, and that we think what would bring to a really successful image on both sides. Of course, we don't have any solution, but we just brought you some examples to open a discussion, and just not to see the clients always as our enemies, but as our potential for us to have a direction, not waste time, optimize everything, and then be both happy about our results and successful creating an interaction, a communication, good communication with the clients. So just let me say the last thing, that we are super happy and honored to be on this stage today. And being in person after all these events online is amazing, is incredible for us. And we just want to thank you on behalf of all of us and Assembly for your attention. And thank you very, very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much for coming all the way from London here to be with us.
Easy.
Yeah, one might argue that, but we still really appreciate it also for your availability and flexibility and the fact that you were really passionate about the whole process. These guys, they were posting pictures of them rehearsing up until this morning. And I was like, it's only the D2, People have 70% of alcohol still in their blood running. But jokes aside, this was really informative and educational, and thanks a lot.
Friends.